The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. Please rise as you are able and give your attention to Councilmember Emerson for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will you please bow and pray with me? Our Father in heaven, we just come to you tonight humbly, Father, and just ask your blessing on all who are here in this proceeding. And Father, I just ask that you give us wisdom as we look into things that affect the lives of your people, Father, and our citizens. And Father, I just also ask that your peace be upon our city and indeed the world, Father. There are so many horrific things happening in this day and age, and we just pray for the peace that only you can bring. Father, lastly, I just ask that as we enter this time of Advent, that you just remind us in our hearts and minds, Father, that this is all about the celebration of you sending your Son here to earth to live a perfect life and to die on the cross for us. And it's in his name that I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no proclamations. We do have presentations. Mr. City Manager, if you'd introduce a presentation.
Yes, our first presentation tonight is from the Topeka Metropolitan Transit Authority. They're here to provide an annual report to us.
Good evening, everyone, and it's great to be here. As you know, every year, Topeka Metro comes before you to provide the annual report for this year, fiscal year 17. I have with me tonight our board chairman, Jim Ogle, our board members, Elsie Eisenbar, Rod Miller, and Jim Daniel. And so we want to thank you for this time tonight, and we appreciate your attention. Before you have a copy of our annual report, and I know you have a lot of pressing business, so just quickly I want to share with you that ridership was up this year by 3.3%, an additional 40,000 riders, and all on the fixed route. We actually went down on the paratransit route. We think part of that is due to our Freedom Pass program, where if you are paratransit eligible, then you get to ride the fixed route for free, and we teach you how to ride the fixed route and make sure that you are doing it safely and that you have the ability to get to and from where you want to go, because our goal is that we all ride together, and we believe that's what ADA is all about. So also I'd like to share that this year 43,000 plus youth rode our bus between May 15th and August 15th. Again, our 5th year for Kids Ride Free all summer long, going to school, to the pool, to grandma's, seeing their friends, whatever. We know it works, and this is good. Also, I am very pleased to announce that this year we were able to negotiate a contract with Topeka Public Schools for all 4,000 high school students to ride free, not just to and from school, but any time. Ridership is up. Our buses are packed in the morning with comatose, quiet, compliant teenagers. It's wonderful. Everybody is just, it's like kind of the Walking Dead. So, but at 3 o'clock, it's a little bit different story from about 3 to 3:45. It's kind of raucous, but they've been great. We appreciate the support of 501, and as the superintendent did share early in the year, attendance is up. So there's no reason not to get to school. We also know a lot of middle schoolers are taking advantage of these passes, and they're also riding to school. So we know it works. I would also like to say that a year ago this time, ADA accessibility throughout the Topeka for our bus amenities and bus stops was only at 20%. That's not acceptable. Right now, we're at 38%, and with everything that we have in the works right now, it's all kind of in different stages, we will be up to 45% by midsummer. And that is good, and that is the way it should be. And we've been doing it with grants that we've been receiving from KDOT and from the federal government. So this is a good thing. ADA accessibility for everyone, strollers, grocery carts, wheelchairs, people just walking with kids. That's what this is all about, is getting people connected to their lives. And we believe we're assisting in that. Also, a final note, 4.2 mills. We are beginning our 9th year of 4.2 mills. I'm sorry, we have maxed that out. We've robbed Peter, Paul, and Mary. So we've done it all. I don't know that we can squeeze much more out. And there's so many more things to do. If you look on the next to the last page of this report, page 21, you will see that there's a to-do list. And I'm going to turn it over to our board chairperson right now, but if you do have any questions or concerns with anybody, your constituents, please give me a call and let me know, and we're always glad to help out however we can. Jim?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for giving us this opportunity today. I was wondering, Mayor-elect, would you call that jacket color crimson that you're wearing today?
No, sir, I call it Wonder Woman red.
Wonder Woman red, I like that. Well, we're going to need Wonder Woman and a few others to help us achieve the goals that we have listed on the Focused on the Future page in your report. From time to time, we've been before you and shared with you ideas of expansion of service, running later at night, helping shift workers from a variety of shifts getting to work, running Sunday service, running a variety of different options. In order to do that and to figure out what's most important to the general public, we're beginning a long-term process in the coming year of engaging the entire community in developing a long-term plan for Topeka Metro. We're fortunate that the MTPO has supported this effort and is paying for the majority, if not all but all of the funding with our small match. These are some of the elements we expect to hear about because we've heard about them in the past. We expect to hear others here through this process. As Susan said, we need to figure out what this community wants from Topeka Metro, additional services and activities, and find then ways working with you to figure out how to pay for them. Thank you all for your continuing support and your enthusiasm for our efforts.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Excellent, good information. You have time for one question.
Yeah, just a quick question. How much do you need to actually achieve these goals? Do you know that yet?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Like how many mills? And no is an acceptable answer. I'm just wondering, rather than give you a $0.5 raise.
If you added up everything on there from the Wanmaker Express,
Yeah.
Sunday service, evening service past 11 o'clock for second shift workers, free Wi-Fi, everything you see there, maybe as much as $4 million.
Okay. So I would encourage you guys, as you discuss this with the community, be frank about how much money you need, because correct me if I'm wrong, that this has to go to a public vote to increase the funding because of the mill level cap. So, and I fully support doing that. If the people want it, the money's got to come from somewhere. But I say, if we're going to raise it, let's raise it and do it and get people these services because they're very important. Excellent work, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
And Councilwoman Ortiz had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a comment. Susan, and to the board members, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing what you said you were going to do. It's nice to see you come before us and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it's nice to see that you actually have done that. And when I look around my district and I see all the shelters that are being dug and put up, I marvel because my constituents wanted that, and they're nice and they're ADA. So pat yourself on the back, and I say thank you, and I will continue to support you.
Thank you. There you go. Excellent, thank you. And just to clarify on the tax, financial administrator. The bus levy is included as part of the city levy for the, going over the tax lid. So that's why, in case the people don't understand that particular issue. You want to comment on that?
Yes, the TMTA is a very unique structure in the state of Kansas, the only one that's structured exactly the way it is, where you all have a relationship with appointing their board, and ultimately, we levy their mills. So because of that, it's been decided that they really would fall under the mill cap of the whole city. So either we need to kind of shift mills between the two entities, or it would come down to a public vote unless we change something about the legislation.
And meaning, if we would raise the mill levy a certain level, we have to be approved by a vote of the people.
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you. And City Manager, you have another introduction.
Yes, I'm very pleased tonight to make an introduction of our Public Works Director, to have him talk a little bit about an extraordinary employee that we have. Joe Singer is being recognized tonight for his service to the city for the last 47 years. So if Jason and Joe would please come forward.
There he is.
Thank you, City Manager. So as he said, we wanted to recognize Joe Singer. He is the city surveyor and has been with the city of Topeka for 47 years. Started on June 8th, 1970 as an engineering aide for the city of Topeka, and worked his way up to be one of the lead players in our division. And I felt it important to have Joe attend tonight and recognize him, because I think in his role, he's played a huge role in a number of the infrastructure projects that we have in the community, making sure our land records are correct, our survey, and he's still playing. He's retiring on the 15th, but he told me, he said, I've still got to get one last conference call in with the Corps of Engineers to make sure there's a smooth handoff on the levee project. And I think Joe just exemplifies servant leadership and the class of people that we have in the organization. And so I just wanted to say thank you to him tonight.
Thank you, thank you. Joe, on behalf of the entire city, thank you for your service. Thank you very much for what you have done for the city. We will then proceed with the agenda and with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgass.
Here.
Councilmembers Hiller.
Here.
Clear. Here. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
De La Isla.
Here.
Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz. Here. Cohen.
Here.
And Harmon.
There are no additions or deletions to the agenda, and there are no executive sessions planned. We can proceed then with the consent agenda.
A is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout declaring the entire boundary of the City of Topeka and rescinding City of Topeka Resolution Number 8832. B is denial of a tort claim submitted by W&W Utility Construction for $19,500 for extra labor that was allegedly expended due to the city's inability to efficiently locate its water mains. C is denial of a tort claim submitted by Patricia Lil Mack in the amount of $80,000 to $100,000 for damages related to a sewer backup at her rental property. D is denial of a tort claim appeal submitted by Eric Kajorley on behalf of Roast and Roast Consulting in the amount of $845 for alleged damage to its sprinkler system. E are minutes of the regular meeting of December 21, 2017, and there's a list of cereal malt beverage and dance hall license application renewals that staff is recommending approval.
That is the consent agenda. Your pleasure. Councilwoman De La Isla moves to approve. Councilman Harmon seconds. All in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. We go to the action items. 1, public hearing on the budget amendments. If the clerk would read.
Governing body, we presented information.
The clerk will read first.
Sorry.
We have to have that.
A is a public hearing for the purpose of hearing and answering objections of taxpayers relating to the proposed amendments to the 2017 operating budget.
Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, I'll learn this eventually. Not used to having it introduced. We've already discussed and had item presented relative to the amendments to the budget. There were 3 amendments. Tonight is the public hearing portion, and we stand ready to answer any questions that may be presented.
Are there any questions from the council prior to the public hearing? Seeing none, we will open a public hearing. This is on the budget amendments. We have where particularly more revenue was received during the year than was anticipated, and therefore we have to amend the budget so that those additional funds can be spent. And that is what we will be doing. This is a public hearing. Then the action will be taken next week, final action. Seeing no individuals coming forth to speak, the public hearing is closed. That completes item A. We go then to item B.
B is approval of funding recommendations by the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Advisory Council in the amount of $535,000 for the 2018 Special Alcohol Fund.
Mr. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Last week, Max Wilson presented the information relative to the decisions of the committee. He is here to answer questions if there are any for him.
Are there any questions? We had a hearing on this last week. Seeing none, Councilman Schwartz?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Yes.
I don't know about everybody else, but I've had several phone calls about this, and I would like to see if we can send it back to the committee as we do other things that have some issues to work out. So I'll make that motion to send it back. I think there is some concern about especially one project that will, or one funding entity that will lose a lot of money this year, and I would hope that the committee could work it out. So I would make that motion if there's a second.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, Councilman Harmon seconds. And this would be referring the alcohol grant recommendations back to the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Advisory Council. Okay. Do you want to speak any more to that or discussion? Councilman Clear.
I really hate to do that because then we start undermining and doubting what we have asked professionals to look at. And I hate for that, for an agency that didn't quite meet standards or didn't quite do it right, to be able to say, oh, wait, you really need to look at this again, you need to fit me in, because they've gone through the process and they were vetted, and I think it undermines the process and the people that we have asked to serve on that committee.
Thank you. Councilman Jensen?
So if we do remand it back to committee, I'm curious what the process would be. If this has to be in before the end of the year, I tend to agree with Councilwoman Clear that, I can't imagine they haven't already done a thorough job of looking at it, but if indeed we ask them to take a second look, how much time would they have? And ultimately, that would then come back to what I expect would be a different council. I'm just curious how the process would work, and are we even technically allowed to do this sort of thing?
Mr. City Manager?
Yes, I'd asked Neighborhood Relations Director Sasha Hahn to refer to that. So
Good evening. So, like our ECD grants, the grantees' funding year generally begins on January 1st. So, Councilmember Jensen is correct that the committee would have to make hay pretty quick in order to get it back to you all to be approved by the end of the year, so that those funding years could begin on January 1st. Would be the biggest concern.
Okay. That answer?
But we are allowed to do that? To remand it back to them?
I would think.
Okay.
I think we can. Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. A procedural question. Is there a particular time frame that the committee normally makes those decisions in, and did that get met this year?
I don't think that there's anything in policy, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
I'm a lot more familiar with ECD than I am with special alcohol, but typically, as you all are aware, it's this time of year that this recommendation is coming. I am not aware of any delay in the committee's meeting schedule.
Okay. I asked that because we have, I was much more involved in setting up the ECD routines, and we calendared it earlier in the year so that there was plenty of time. And I do know that with the I made a note actually when this came up last time, after the first year of the restructurement and the council committee handling ECD, we wrote an appeal process into the ECD process so that if someone had an appeal, it would happen at the committee level, that everyone had an opportunity to do that, and that it would happen at the committee level. And I believe that that option has been exercised more than once in the last couple of years, again, with the idea that the decision-making would happen at the committee level and not here, and we wanted to break a routine of people coming to the council and wanting the council to change the decisions, and we've respected that, which I think is important. But that appeal process that we built into ECD, we felt was important at the time, so that if someone wanted to challenge their scores or something like that, they had a way to do it. And I had made a note that maybe we should add that to this process for next year, or suggest that you all did. So I just say that for conversation, because they didn't have an opportunity to appeal with the process that we had. Is that correct?
Okay.
So I'd have to defer to Mr. Wilson on whether or not they hear appeals. I'm not aware. Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Max Wilson is the chair of the grant committee.
This decision was made after hours and hours of review by one of the most competent grant review committees I've ever seen or heard of. Spent many hours doing it. Are you willing to grant further consideration for every other grantee when they have to be cut because of this decision? I think, to be fair, you have to, so you could be looking at appeals by 4 other grantees. Something to consider. I was and am a great supporter of the Youth Project. They wouldn't have even been considered as a grant applicant if they didn't meet the minimum standards of principal purpose of alcohol and drug abuse prevention. Wouldn't have even accepted the application. We accepted the application. Problem with the application was the fidelity to which of the evidence-based program that they chose to do, and the other elements of the scoring sheet, a number of different areas where they scored lower than the other grantees. So that's why it was a combination of a reduction of $85,000 compared to this year, and plus the grant scoring. Wasn't that they weren't eligible. So I just ask you that question. If you're going to reopen this thing, you could be extended this several months.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Councilman Harmon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Karen, the appeal process you mentioned was with respect to the ECD?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Can that appeal process be brought into this review, this alcohol drug abuse?
I would think so in future years. I mean, the issue is, what do we do today? But I certainly think so. It provides an opportunity, if somebody don't like their scores, to go back right then and have that conversation with the committee. I can't recall whether the ECD committee has ever changed its decision. I don't think so, but it gave the entity a chance to speak up and be heard. I think Councilwoman DeLisa.
I'm sorry, you have a
Well, I
question?
thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Karen. I would implore the committee, or when it meets again, to consider enacting some sort of an appeal process at the committee level, just like you do in the ECD. I think that's, out of fairness to the applicants, I think that would be an appropriate step to take. Thank you.
Councilman DeLisa.
Thank you, Mayor Wolgass. The answer to that question is yes, we have. When we have taken a look at the application, if an organization has demonstrated that part of the scoring process did not have evidence to prove that one of the criteria that they were, required of, for example, there was, at one point in time, an organization had been considered to be duplicated services. They brought evidence to show that they were not duplicated services, so we added that point. But it still did not get them to the place that they got the funding that they desired. So the committee has changed points. It hasn't changed grant allocation specifically, but the appeal is a process for you to look at your scores and see how you could have points added to see if you could meet that threshold to get more funds, any funds at all.
Other discussion? Councilman Schwartz?
Thank you, Ron. We have sent other things back. Planning Commission is one of the areas that we have when we have zoning issues and anything else, so we have sent something back. Thank you. We have sent things back, like to the Planning Commission. I just feel like there was a lot of the ECD. We had somebody that was not funded. We heard a lot from them after that happened. And they didn't feel like they had a fair appeal process. And maybe we're working those bugs out, but we don't have that with this committee. They have looked at the grants. I respect the committee process, but after serving in the legislature, there's a lot of things that go back to committee. So I still stand by the fact that maybe we need to work out the bugs and try to get the appeal process in this year. And if we don't, if this motion fails, then I would hope that our budgeting process for 2018, 2019 that you all are going to go through pretty soon looks at some of those issues, because I agree with the youth project. We have a lot of youth projects going on in Topeka that are not working together. And what happens is you get money spread out and you can't get the work done. So maybe that's, hopefully, the Momentum 2020 is going to, 2022, is going to help to consolidate some of our efforts, like working with our youth on substance abuse and alcohol.
Okay. Other questions? Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to refer this back to the Drug and Alcohol Advisory Council. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 no and 1 yes. Ms. Schwartz?
Okay, the motions have been defeated. It'd be appropriate then to have a motion to, if that is your pleasure, to proceed with approving the recommendations. Councilman Clear? Moves to approve. Deputy Mayor Cohen seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the approval is granted. We proceed to item C, a zoning ordinance.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at 2300 Southwest 30th Street from M2 Multiple Family Dwelling District to O&I 2 Office and Institutional District.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning Commission unanimously approved the rezoning the Scottish Rite property from M2 to O&I 2. Planning Director Bill Finder will present information on this request. A protest petition was filed in this request, so a 3/4 vote of approval is required, which is 8 votes.
Mr. Finder.
Good evening, governing body. Thank you. The first zoning item before you tonight is a proposal at 30th, Southwest 30th and McVicker on the northwest corner. This is the home for Topeka Scottish Rite for the last 47 years. Since 1970, they have a fraternal meeting hall, 15,000 square foot. Due to declining membership, they are looking at putting it on the market and selling it. The current zoning, M2, does not allow for uses typically found for this type of building, an institutional building, an office building. We've changed zoning codes over the years. That's why that has happened. When it was originally built, this was an appropriate zoning. It no longer is. So so with the ONI2 proposal, there were two key findings of support to be made. One is that it would allow the building to not sit vacant, which would not be a benefit for the neighborhood. So likely reusers of the property would likely fall under a use or a category supported by ONI2. And then also we want to make sure that that new zoning is compatible with the adjacent uses and the neighborhood. So with the church offices and ONI2 zoning that is already in the area, you kind of have a little node of office and multiple family and institutional intensity. We did make that finding. There were no questions of concern. Actually, I'm sorry. There were questions at the neighborhood meeting when we went out as what types of uses could be allowed under that zoning, and those were answered. When we got to the planning commission meeting, there was no testimony of any opposition, written or verbal. So both staff and the planning commission do recommend approval of the rezoning. I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Councilman Jensen?
Thank you, Your Honor. So if there were no complaints, then why the protest position all of a sudden?
Council.
Specific concerns they have?
Councilmember Jensen, that was not part of the public record presented at the Planning Commission. I have not had any conversations. I think there was some, after the Planning Commission meeting, some concern by one of the neighbors, and they talked to other neighbors.
So nobody has voiced any specific concern to a specific activity that may or may not be undertaken with this change?
I think just like at the neighborhood meeting that we had, there was some questions about what uses would be permitted. I think, I know we answered those questions. As to whether those satisfied everybody, I don't know.
Councilwoman Del Isla?
Thank you, Mayor Wilkas. This is in my district, and I did receive a lot of calls and a lot of email correspondence from the district. And the biggest concern that people had was they were really scared. We have a church right there, we have a preschool, and if you walk down the street a little bit more, you have Jardine, which is the academy over there. So the concern was if we change the zoning, will there be like liquor stores or something that would be nefarious to the neighborhood because it's inside of a neighborhood? I can tell you that I went ahead and I not only spoke with planning, but I also went and took time and spoke with the developer and the real estate person that is working on that. And I've been told that the great thing that we have is that through the planning mechanisms, should something come in front of the council that violates that or that interrupts the neighborhood plan, we would have to approve that. So that gave me a lot of peace of mind in the sense that, you know, the concerns of the constituents were being heard, and that's my neighborhood. I live 3 blocks from there. So I don't want something bad to happen there either. So I felt very comfortable, and I've heard some pretty nice things that may be coming over there. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm pretty excited about the possibility and the potential of wonderful things happening in that corner.
Okay, thank you. And I looked at the record. There was very, very little comment made at the public hearing in the neighborhood in opposition, which sometimes occurs. And then this is where we are sitting as a judicial body overseeing or approving or disapproving the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Do you want to speak to that, and what are the areas and/or with the city attorney that's really in our purview to approve or disapprove?
As you stated, Mayor, this is a quasi-judicial decision, and as such, if you've had any communications with outside parties, you need to reveal those and then state also as part of that, that you can or cannot make a fair and objective decision, even given those outside communications. And I believe Councilmember De La Isla has already done part of that. So if you all could at least make that known to folks, and then let everyone know that, you know, aside from that, you can still make a fair and objective decision based on the record that's in place, which is the Planning Commission meeting minutes, the staff report. What else am I missing still?
That's it.
Okay, that's helpful. Is there other discussion, Councilman Harmon?
Is this the time to admit to ex parte?
Yeah, well, we can. I was going to wait till the discussion was
Okay.
ended, but.
Go ahead.
All right. Is there other discussion first on the proposal, and then we'll do ex parte at that time? Yes.
Mayor, I guess our role in this quasi-judicial process is to understand if there's any new information. It would be helpful to me if I knew what the people in the petition said they thought was the problem, so that you could respond as to whether that had been a little more clearly. Did the people just say they didn't want it, or did they say, I mean, if you haven't read it, who has?
Well, I have, that's in the packet, that's in the information, is a
sorry.
copy of all their petitions, and I just paged through this, and there's not their issue, they have a protest. It does not state a reason.
It doesn't?
I
Okay.
guess they don't have to.
Okay, just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Is there other discussion? All right, I don't believe we have a motion, do we?
Well, you want
All
to do
right.
ex parte, right?
Well, we can still have a motion to approve, I think, and to show that we're moving forward, and then we'll do the ex parte. Councilman Harmon?
Motion to approve.
Carmen moves to approve, Claire seconds. Now let's, and I don't know that we need to go to every person, or we'll start. Does anyone that we know that Councilman De La Isla received communications? Has anyone else received communications? Councilman Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have received ex parte communication from one of the members of the applicant. Despite that ex parte communication, I do feel I'm able to make a fair and objective consideration of the application based on the evidence provided on the record. In making my decision, I reviewed the ordinance, the staff report, and the Planning Commission minutes, and those will be the factors upon which I make my decision. Thank you.
Said very well. Thank you. Now we don't have to all say that, but we agree. Councilman Jensen?
Well, I will not have the grace and elegance of my esteemed colleague. Ditto.
Okay. Anyone?
I got a couple of emails. That was
Okay,
it.
okay, and I received none.
Same thing, a lot of emails. That was
Okay,
it.
you received emails.
And same, with the same conclusion as Mr. Harmon.
All right. Anyone, Councilman Ortiz?
I received some emails, and Richard took the words right out of my mouth.
I knew you were going to say it that way. All right, we've just about got around. All right. Then we have a motion and a second for the body. All those in favor, vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the ordinance, zoning ordinance is approved. Go to item D, another zoning ordinance.
Yes, the Planning Commission unanimously approved the presented PUD. Planning Director Bill Finder will explain.
Okay,
request
and
for
we'll
approval.
have the city clerk will read.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout, amending the district map referred to made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at the northeast corner of Southwest Westport Drive and Southwest 22nd Terrace from O&I 2 Office and Institutional District to PUD Planned Unit Development for O&I 2 Office and Institutional Use Group plus self-service laundry use.
Mr. City Manager.
As I said, Mr. Finder, please.
All right, Mr. Finder.
Thank you once again. As was read, this proposal at the corner of Southwest Westport and Southwest 22nd Terrace, northwest corner is currently a vacant piece of land. Roughly, well, In this case, what is being proposed on this tract is a self-service laundromat, 24-hour operation. It's about 12,000 square feet. The area itself is, as you can kind of see there, is transitioning from the north out of more intensive commercial, which leads into our regional commercial corridors, but it's also transitioning into a neighborhood. And so it's always these tough situations where we try and work a balance of the interests here. The current zoning is O&I 2, office and institutional. What was read and what is before you is actually a PUD, which is an O&I 2 use, plus the laundromat use. So this does not allow any more commercial to, other than that laundromat, and then any office type uses in the future. As you can kind of see from what I was saying, being in a transitional area, we did not want this to be a commercial feel, so we were very hesitant to open up too much non-office or residential type character. So we wanted this to have an office feel, even though it was a commercial use. We did that a number of ways by limiting no more commercial uses other than this laundromat. Signage is an office type of signage limitation. The building design was worked on quite a bit to make it more compatible as an office type of building. We eliminated some access from 22nd Terrace, so there's no access from the residential street. And they also established quite a bit of landscape buffers on all street frontages to reflect what's out there now. So the commercial aspects of this, other than what's happening inside the building, have been minimized to the greatest extent possible. The one thing that kind of remains, though, was the ask for a 24-hour operation. That was recommended to be reduced to 16 hours by staff. Plan Commission did not, this is where we differed, they did not agree. So what's before you is a recommendation to retain a 24-hour operation with the laundromat. The condition that was added to kind of help mitigate that was to make a condition in the PUD to have a staff on site during all hours of operation. That is part of the PUD. The main reason that we pulled from the Planning Commission why they were okay with the 24 hours was mainly, I think there was some push for a flexible user work hours, third shift, and the fact that they did not believe this would lead to anything, any sort of criminal or safety issue in the area. That should be in the minutes, but to summarize. So what's before you, Planning Commission did recommend unanimously with those conditions I stated. So I'll stand for any questions at this point. And by the way, I'll just mention there were protest petitions received. They did not amount to enough to kick this into a supermajority vote. So just so you know, we did receive some, but not enough.
Councilman Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. Bill, could you speak to the staff recommendation to which you alluded regarding limiting the hours of operation to no more than 18 continuous hours? Can you kind of speak to why that was a recommendation coming from the planning department?
Sure, Councilmember Harmon. Getting back to the area, you really have to understand in a commercial, if this is in the middle of a commercial area, further north, that would be an expectation that you might have, a business open 24 hours, people coming and going. As you get further into the neighborhood section, we have townhouses here, we have people who have bought homes, we have some medical offices across the street. That probably wasn't their expectations when they purchased their property or developed. So And that isn't normally the expectation of a residential area, so to have something open 24 hours like that. So that's kind of where we've tried to balance out those interests. They feel that was part of their business model to have it 24 hours, and we recognize that, but I think we were trying to walk that line and recognize the interest of the neighbors as well.
Okay. Councilman Jensen?
Thank you. So we would have the option to amend it back to, was it 16 hours if we so chose?
You have some options, and it would take a certain number of votes, but you can amend. You can send this back with direction to the Planning Commission, or you can take action as is. And it just depends on the number of votes to do that.
Actually, and I think what he's saying is we have the right to amend the document, and it requires 7 votes.
That's what I said.
Okay. Councilwoman Claire?
Just for clarification, you said there weren't a significant amount to meet the statutory requirement to trigger a supermajority vote. What is a significant amount?
There needs to be at least 20% of the land area in the notification area. Those property owners that own 20% of that land area, if there's more than that, and then that is the threshold.
What was there?
I can't tell you, to be quite honest.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Jensen? I've done that, too. Deputy Mayor Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to point out that I really don't think that they're going to have a higher crime element than they already do. Somebody was shot over there at West Spring Pines last week in the hallway over a drug deal gone bad. So just wanted to point that out. I don't think that this is going to bring any new crime into that area.
All right, okay, thank you. Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Finder, a question. I understand when you guys are going through and you're saying you'll have this, like I saw one of the things you're going to add is more landscaping along Westport toward the south end and tapering to the north. But when we put stipulations on a business like you have to have a 24-hour attendant there, how do we enforce that?
Councilmember Emerson, that's a good question. I asked our staff that same question. It's enforceable in as much as we can go out and if we get a complaint, we will go check it out.
It'd be by
We will
complaint.
do flex schedules. So we will make sure it's being adhered to.
And we would have the authority to shut them down if they were not, that's a part of the PUD, correct?
Ultimately, it would be, a zoning violation. They would be given a chance to correct. We'd go out and look at it again, make sure there's, if we continue to get complaints, yes, it goes through an enforcement process, and ultimately, it could lead to that.
Okay, other discussion, questions? Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I read that, and I don't like the 24-hour service. I don't even like an attendant, 24-hour attendant. It won't bring new crime, but it'll bring crime. I look at Ford's Laundromat and how many times they were robbed on East 6th Street when we had it there. I look at the laundromat that was in East Topeka that was in Deer Creek Traffic Way, or Deer Creek, and the gentleman got robbed there, and then he went to another business, and then those guys were shot. I just don't think it's very, very safe. And the same gentleman that owned Deer Creek, he also owns the 24-hour service behind 17th and, it's the Dairy Queen there, Medford. And his business, they've been in there, they've tore up machines, they've robbed people. It's just been unsafe that he has had to clear, scale back, and it cost him a lot of money. Actually, he's selling it right now. So to put a person in there, whether it's a woman or a man, is to me is a dangerous situation, because you have all those people lurking, and I just cringe at that. I'd like to make a motion to send this remand this back.
Okay. The motion's been made to remand this back to the Planning Commission that'd be for further consideration, and we put a statement specifying the basis for the body to approve or disapprove. It would be perhaps in the aspect of the hours being open, and that's a somewhat, Councilman Harmon?
Second.
Okay, well, second. So we have a motion and a second to remand this back to the Planning Commission for further consideration, and that requires 6 votes, which is our normal majority. Is there a discussion of this motion to defer it back? Councilman Hiller?
Obviously, if people want to refer it back, we can, but I personally don't have a problem with it. You know, I appreciate the comments that the process that the Planning Commission went through and the responses. I guess I've lived near the 17th and Medford laundromat forever, it seems, and I'm not aware of issues there. You know, when I first was here in Topeka, we were out in Eastboro with the laundromat back there, and there really weren't any problems. You know, those are neighborhood centers that people use. They typically are people from the neighborhood, which it was identified in here, but within a mile and a half, either for convenience or because they have extra large comforters and things that don't fit in their washing machine and so on. It's a convenience to have, and it appeared to me that a lot of thought went through it. Many people do want a police substation or somebody around in their neighborhood. I get both sides of it, but it seemed to me that they did a good job. I also went out, we all got a lot of ex parte communication in terms of a lot of emails, but one lady said she was concerned about this place in East Topeka, and so I went out and looked at it. It's at the 15th and Adams. The facility, it's bright, it's clean, but I'm just saying, it's nice. Her comment was that it was terrible and things like that, but it wasn't at all. So.
Okay, other questions? Councilman Jensen?
Thank you. So I will agree with everyone's concern about it being open 24 hours a day. My mother always told me nothing good ever happened after midnight, and in 30-something years, that's never faulted me. My question is, if that's the only thing we're remanding it for, why not just change it at this level, approve it, and then let the business owner carry on? Is there a particular reason we need to remand it back just to have the hours reviewed?
So you're speaking against?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm happy to send it back, but if that's the only reason we're sending it back, why not approve it with a shorter time frame? I guess I would offer that as a friendly amendment, if that's possible, then.
I think we should take care of this one before we...
Right, either withdraw the motion, I would say, or go ahead and vote, and depending
defeat it
on
and then
if
go
the
the other
outcome
one.
is
I think,
positive
yes.
or not.
Councilman Hiller?
I think that the Planning Commission is where those conversations are supposed to happen. It's our routine that if we want something reconsidered, we should give the Planning Commission the opportunity to do it, and people notice that it's going to happen and a chance to testify on either side and so on, which is appropriate at the Planning Commission level. I think it should, if we want it reconsidered, I think we should let the Planning Commission do it.
Okay, so you're speaking in favor.
And I'm not opposed.
Okay. Councilman Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is in my district, even though it seems like it should be in Councilman Cohen's district. It's technically in mine. I, too, have received numerous communications, phone calls, emails from residents of the Pheasant Run condominium group, which is south of the proposed site. Their concerns are twofold. They're concerned, obviously, about the 24 hours, and I am too. Whenever our planning department makes a recommendation, as it did in this case, to limit the hours of operation to 18 hours, I take great stock in that, and if the planning commission overrides that, that raises a red flag in my mind, which it certainly did in this case. The residents are also concerned about the traffic. With the congestion at 21st and Wanamaker during the construction, they had a lot of overflow traffic coming on Westport. Which was not met with a great deal of, it was met with a lot of inconvenience for the residents. So I think it's not just the 24-hour issue. I think they have legitimate concerns that should be addressed before the Planning Commission with respect to traffic also. So I appreciate Councilmember Jensen's thought to amend this directly, but I think there are additional issues which the planning commission should take up in addition to the hours of operation. So anyway, I hope we will support sending it back. Thank you.
Councilwoman DeLisa.
I just wanted to state the same thing that Councilman Harmon just stated. There's been a lot of concerns. We have a whole neighborhood, even the apartment complex manager has been engaged in this. He has received a lot of communication. And again, the point that I take a lot of stock, not only is that the amount of communication that we have been receiving, but the fact that staff had also recommended, let's limit the hours of operation. We had in my district boss hogs, and I can tell you that the business was open till 2 in the morning, and even when they were not just having their stuff happening, there was always concerns because people were trying to sleep on the other side. So there's things that we're not taking into consideration here. I want to make sure that the voices of those constituents are heard, and I am going to support sending it back to planning.
Other discussion. Councilwoman Claire.
So I'm trying to understand the process. Did they not hear all these concerns already?
Councilwoman Claire, there were a number of people, as is evidenced in the minutes, that did speak against the 24-hour operation, concerns about the traffic at the Planning Commission and at the neighborhood meeting as well.
So we're going to send it back so they can rehear it all? Just checking.
I think another question might be, what is the amount of traffic that this has? I mean, I don't think it's a traffic that 8 cars at a time might be entering no more than a doctor's office would have. I don't think I can see where traffic was a major issue, but maybe there is. Maybe we need to have a count on how many cars typically are at these.
Yes, and that was addressed. There was no traffic study required because of how much not enough traffic would be being
There's no
created.
traffic, yeah.
But that being said, the residents still brought it up because of all the detouring going on in the area. And so it's worth taking it's probably worth to get back and circle back to them, let them know.
Other discussion, final. We have a motion before us to defer this, remand it back to the Planning Commission. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes, council members Clear and Cohen voting no.
8 having voted yes, the ordinance is the zoning ordinance is referred back to the Planning Commission. We go to item E, ordinance on animals.
E is an ordinance introduced by the Public Health and Safety Committee revising Title VI Animals of the City of Topeka Code.
And this has been referred and studied by the Public Health and Safety Committee, and so we have the chair to provide the overview and introduction. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you know, about 10 or 11 months ago, we remanded all of Title VI to the Public Health and Safety Committee to do an extensive overhaul of animal control in the city. And we did that in 2 phases. We discussed adding miniature potbelly pigs as pets, and then we essentially overhauled the entire ordinance. There's over 60 changes to the ordinance from one end to the other. I'm not entirely sure everyone wants to sit here as we go through all of them. So, Ms. Robertson, if you could give us just a quick high-level overview of some of the highlights, and then we'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Jensen. If all of you will recall, this was remanded to the committee or referred to the committee back in February. And the committee's had 5 meetings since that time. Initially, it was referred to consider allowing miniature pigs within the city limits because there had been a petition filed by some folks, and they had requested that the council consider that. As part of the review process, we found that there were a lot more revisions that needed to be made. They are vast and far-reaching. They're not really in any particular category. They're just kind of, they got rid of a lot of duplication. There's not a separate chapter for dogs and one for cats. That we kind of combined everything that made sense to combine, make it a little bit easier for folks who wanted to pick up the code and get to where they needed to go. So here this evening, also to answer any questions you may have, are the Chief of Prosecution, Karan Thadani. He's sitting there in the front row on the end. And we have several representatives of the TPD, the Animal Control Supervisor, Lisa Pinkley, Lieutenant Joe Perry, and I believe Tracy with record? Pardon? Jamie, okay, sorry, Jamie. So,
Could you give just a brief overview of what changes? I mean, just so, I know you can, but this is more or less updating many of the ordinances, taking out contradictions, cats and dogs
Correct.
and whatever.
correct. For an example, we took a look at the definition section, and there weren't very many. That's probably the only section that got expanded. We kind of added more definitions for a bit more clarity, and I think that really helped. But with regard to the rest of Title VI, we took out a lot. For instance, there was a whole chapter on dogs, and it went through the whole process. If you have to get a permit, you have to get a tag, and these are the other things you have to do. Then you turned several pages, and you had a whole chapter on cats, and it said about the exact same thing. So what we did is tried to take bits and pieces from those different chapters and combine them into one, so that you didn't have to look 3 different places if you had a dog and a cat, so you could go to one spot and take a look. And there were some things that the animal control folks thought were really important. And I think Lisa could probably, the other Lisa, could probably speak more articulately to that. But they had experienced some rough patches out in the field when they had to answer a call, and they weren't quite sure, what direction they should go. We just added a little bit more specifics and clarity. I know that a group of folks had done some amendments back in 2010, and they addressed a lot of some of those more ambiguous situations. So we just kind of tagged onto that and tried to tie the loop and put the package together.
Okay.
Excellent. So one of the big things is the legalization of mini pigs as part of this, and I know that's been somewhat controversial. One of the things I had asked Mr. Trout to speak about is how that would get implemented. For one thing, there's already a substantial number of miniature pigs in the community, and our intent here is basically to legalize them so that they can stay and be controlled in a fashion where it's safe for everyone to have them. And if you would speak to what the process would be to get that underway.
Right, what we would do, I would work with staff in order to determine the best methods to be able to utilize to address issues they may have with the pigs, for the standpoint of ensuring that we have the right equipment, right training, et cetera, in order to be able to ensure using best practices whenever we might come into a situation where they're encountering one of these potbelly pigs.
And you've been through this in Mason City.
Right, in Mason City, we instituted allowing potbelly pigs in the community. It's been in place for a few years, and we haven't had any incidences of issue.
One of our concerns as the leaders of the community is how do we compete for residents with our neighbors? Both of the communities on either side of us allow miniature pigs. They have processes in place such as we would field here in order to allow them to be there and keep them safe. If we talk about how we build a better community, encourage people to move here and live here, one of the things is to have good, clean animal control that lets people have the pets they want, and that's very important to some people. One of my fears is if this doesn't pass, is what are we going to do with all the miniature pigs that are in the community already? What happens to them? Where do they go? Is that going to create a larger problem for us now because we have all these people that have these animals that now, first of all, most of them will probably keep them, and we'll be stuck with trying to enforce that as it is. But what happens to the folks that are honest and try to get rid of them? Where do those go? That could create a larger issue. So with that, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Councilman, Deputy Mayor Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. The first question I had is, when the section went back to the committee, why wasn't just the language cleaned up first, and then we come back with the pigs after the language has been cleaned up? Why has the language been cleaned up with the potbelly pigs added in?
Because the measure was sent back to do both at once.
Okay.
And we did go back and review that.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was a question brought up at the committee level.
Okay. I have a document in front of you. It's something that our city attorney has put together. It goes through the line by line, replacing potbelly pigs, removing that language. And I would like to make a motion that we,
First, let's have a motion to approve the ordinance, and then
I'd
we'll
like
be
to make
ready
the
for,
motion.
you'll move, or actually, would you like to move the ordinance?
I will move to approve the ordinance as written.
All right, and there's a second? We need that. Councilman Clear seconds. And now, we're ready for, you want to do an amendment?
thank you, Mayor. This is going to replace all of the language of pigs, potbelly pigs, and pigs as pets, and just remove that language from.
Okay, and we have a copy of it, I think you have, and I think it starts out, I move to revise the proposed ordinance for the specific purpose of excluding miniature potbelly pigs by taking each of the actions set forth below, and then they are enumerated.
That's correct.
Is there a second for his, Councilman Harmon seconds? All right, you want to speak any more to that?
I have received a lot of communication from my constituents on this one, and a lot of them live there along Westport. They live out in Miller's Glen and Sherwood Park, and they do not want pigs living next to them.
Other discussion, Councilman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lisa, I thought we were going to bring this in twofold, one with the potbelly pig, to do it in two separate votes. Did we not do that? I thought we had talked about that.
No, Councilmember Ortiz, I think the decision was made to combine them because the request was, did we send it back just for pigs, or did we send it back for an overhaul? And we sent it back for both, so we did both.
But in our meeting, we had talked about separating the two.
I think that discussion occurred, but I don't think that was the decision of the committee to do them separately. Originally, I presented it in phases, but then after the discussion, we put them both together to present one document.
That was my understanding, that we were going to bring them back as two separate.
Councilman Claire?
It was my understanding we talked about it, and then we decided to bring it back, and if this body wanted to separate them and vote on them, then we would do it that way. That was my understanding.
All right. Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Deputy Mayor Cohen, I've also, at a lot of neighborhood meetings I've had, it's also been made clear to me by my constituents that they would not like this. They don't want potbelly pigs, so I'm in favor of the motion.
Okay, Councilman Claire?
I still worry that people think these pigs are farm hogs. These pigs are not farm hogs. These are not the pigs that go in your backyard and root and oink around. These are pets that can be trained to the litter box. They cost a lot of money. I don't see anybody making a little farm pet. If they wanted a hog, that would be a different matter. This is a pet. And we've seen the pictures. Yes, it's smaller than a dog. It may weigh as much as my St. Bernard, but they're smaller, and they're smart. And I just hope people are realizing these are not farm hogs. These are potbelly pig pets. And so I have gotten the opposite, that people are concerned that we have some misunderstanding up there.
Okay. Councilman Jensen?
Thank you. So what I would add is that we have done a substantial amount of work to address a lot of the concerns that people have brought forth. You know, one of the first things they said was, oh my gosh, there's going to be a sanitation crisis. Well, actually, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, what we've done is look at sanitation in general in all animals. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a pig or a dog. If you don't clean up after it, it's going to smell. So we've tried to go through item by item and address people's concerns to ensure that you're not living next to a farm. And what I would also add is, you know, we allow goats and chickens and a number of other animals in the city. We're simply excluding miniature pigs, which actually are a lot quieter than roosters are anyway, and they don't eat nearly what goats do. So it's interesting to me that we're willing to allow much larger, more destructive, or I shouldn't say much larger, much more destructive and often louder animals as opposed to these. I think a number of people, if they really knew what they were getting, would be much happier living next to up to a limit of 2 potbelly pigs as opposed to a flock of chickens and roosters crowing at all hours of the day.
Thank you. Other discussion? Councilman Hiller?
Could we have either Lisa Pinkley or Lieutenant Perry talk about the AC management? And I ask that because I recalled clearly a memo that the staff wrote with some serious concerns in January. I think, however, and I didn't hear it till today, that many of those have been resolved as far as the staff goes, so I would
Okay,
appreciate hearing that.
would you come step forward? Did you understand the question?
I can certainly try to answer that.
And say your name and position, please.
Good evening, governing body. My name is Lisa Pinkley. I'm the Animal Control Supervisor.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you're wondering, Councilman Hiller?
There had been concerns about whether the trucks and the cages would accommodate pigs, whether you had to accommodate them in separate trucks, whether the staff would be able to snare them, get them moved into a truck if they needed to pick one up. Trying to think, there was a whole series of just concerns that handling the pigs would have to be done separately and might be therefore costly in time and expense.
Yes, we currently have 3 new trucks with inserts that would not accommodate a 150-pound pig, but we also have 3 other trucks that have cages that can accommodate the pigs, so we would have to use those trucks to go capture them. We have fetch poles that we could try to use, but I would like to order like a hula hoop style net would be on the agenda, and a pig snare is what I'm looking at if this ordinance passed. But I think we could do it. I probably have picked up a handful of pigs in 32 years, so it's not very often we have a pig call even.
And I was just city manager. Have you had, and you said there were any issues like this in Mason City? Are there? You have well-trained miniature pigs.
Right.
Poor pig owners.
As I stated, we had not had any issues relative to any of the pigs that we know lived in the community and that were part of the community, and had not had any issues relative to needing to call animal control for their particular needs to haul in or whatever, or running at large or anything like that.
And I think one of the question was, what if you did pick one up, what would you do with it? Because there was some concern about where they would be placed, and can you respond to that?
Yes, they would go in our cage, and then we would impound it at our livestock veterinarian, which is located up north out of the county.
So you do have a place. I mean, that could handle it
Yes, Mr.
if
Mayor,
necessary.
we do. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? We have a motion that we read to. We have a motion for the ordinance, and then we have a motion to an amendment to revise, to take out all references to the miniature potbelly pigs. Any other discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes. And opposed? We're voting on the amendment to take out the potbelly pigs of the ordinance.
So yes
Which would-
takes them out, no leaves
Yes,
them in.
yes. A yes is for the amendment, which would remove all language for the miniature pigs, which in a sense was saying they would be illegal. And on this, the mayor does not have a vote because of the type of ordinance it is.
We have 5 no, and we have Ortiz, Emerson, Cohen, and Harmon voting yes.
So 5 voting no, the amendment is defeated, and we are then back on the ordinance without that amendment. Is there any other discussion on the ordinance? Councilman Jensen.
I just want to briefly thank all of the staff at the city that worked on this, and my colleagues on the other side of the room. This took a significant amount of work with lots and lots of departments to come together to get all of animal control up to our needs. And it was a real privilege to work with everybody at the city, and I was so pleased to see how the departments came together to ensure that what we have is really what we need for the community. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? We have a motion and second. Councilman Hiller?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got just some, I put it out for comment through Facebook and got some, and I also contacted HSUSA and the animal rights advocates just to have them take a look at it and have just a few suggested amendments. They are very informal. The staff hand wrote them on the draft that we have. Before I suggest them, though, I want to say I did chair the effort to do all of the substantive revisions in 2010, and I'm pleased that I think every single one of them survived this update. One of the things in 2010 that we didn't do was we were dealing enough with the issues that we did not try and do the restructurement and the fine-tuning that has been done with this process. And I, too, want to credit the committee and the staff. They spent a lot of time on it. It's going to be much cleaner and much easier to use.
Well, are these substantive changes, recommendations?
They are, if I can just walk through them, each one is significant, but not big.
Well, I was just saying, if they're major, we probably need to send it back to the committee to review.
I think the group could decide. I think these are pretty minor as far as that goes. It's just tweaking. I have run them by legal and animal control, but I didn't have time to do more than that. See what you think. On the very front of the page, that would be something that had the issue of kennel. The staff, the committee is recommending take out, but a lot of people look in our municipal code to see whether there's a limit on how many animals and so on. So with that cleanup, I have been assured that there will be a cross-reference in this section that tells people that if they want information about kennels or licensing or the number of animals that they can have, that they should look in the state law. So this is not an amendment, but the staff has assured me that it would be in there when things are codified. The second page here, which says 21 at the bottom, in terms of sanitary requirements, one of the commenters observed to me that under this Part B, what it talks about is odors, but not actually any detail about the sanitation, cleaning up waste from a yard or a kennel. And so the recommendation would be in line 174 and 5 and 6 on this sheet. It currently says any areas in which an animal is allowed to roam should be cleaned of waste on a regular basis for purpose of preventing disease and accumulation of flies and the emission of objectionable odors. Be simply to insert the phrase about disease and flies. There was no detail. So.
Well, I just feel, I believe in our committee process. We had a committee review this for 11 months, and I hate to write legislation in a council meeting when we're going through all of these pages of changes. I think either needs to go back to the committee or not. Councilman DeLisa?
Thank you, Mayor Wolgass. I do see the value in these statements. However, my concern is that we just had a conversation with regards to the whole grant situation, and I think that it was stated that it was important for us to respect the committee process. I do appreciate the fact that this is great work, and I think that should we pass or not pass an ordinance, then we could go ahead and send these corrections to the committee once that ordinance is passed for a simple amendment to include these changes, and that would be a much cleaner process. But for us to go ahead and sit here and go bullet by bullet for a process that took 11 months for a committee, I think is rather unfair.
Councilman Jensen?
And I appreciate those comments. As I glance through these are all very minor changes that follow the spirit of what our committee has worked for 11 months to do. So, as I look across the room, my colleagues, I don't see anything that gives me great pause in accepting these. So, I mean, I do understand that we are augmenting the process. So I'll respect the will of the council, but, I don't see anything that changes what we were we're trying to do at the committee level. If anything, you've just sort of clarified some of our thoughts and ideas. And you were part of, I mean, you weren't on the committee, but you attended a lot of meetings, to which I greatly appreciate with your insight and history, so.
Now, I submitted quite a bit, thank you. What I did was that I really appreciate the professionals outside our city, the people that do this all the time, and so the comments that are reflected here are reflective of people who are doing national legislation, and they weren't asked by the committee before it was finished. I took the time to do that. I appreciate the fact that we did get that feedback, and Councilman Jensen, I appreciate your feedback as well. These are folks that have gone out and done rescues and are concerned that it's not just whether, for instance, the smell is drifting to the neighbors next door, but that animals are left in filth, and felt that the clarification was important. On the knowingly injure, kill, maim, and molest, the humane advocates have run into situations where language such as knowingly or willfully got somebody who just hurt an animal off the hook, and they really felt like that term should come out.
Well, I just don't think this is the proper way to do this.
Okay.
For us to go through these tonight here, we don't have the background. I haven't read all of these items, and then to make it to bring it before the council on this measure, I think it'd be better to pass the ordinance and then refer these for possible revisions, updates at some point. Councilman Harmon?
Well, I was just thinking, another option, I mean, I understand respecting the committee process and whatnot, and another option would be simply to defer this for a week, 2 weeks, so allow us to look at these revisions. They're not terribly complex. They're not changing fundamentally the nature of the ordinance. So if we just deferred it, I think it would give the entire council an opportunity to review these amendments, and we could take it up and go on down the road.
Would you
It's just another
want to make a motion to defer the ordinance?
Well, I'd be happy to, Your Honor.
For, let's set a time. How about 2 weeks?
2 weeks. I would make a motion to defer this for 2 weeks for the purposes of reviewing the proposed amendments that have been promulgated by Councilmember Hiller.
Okay.
And then we'd vote in 2 weeks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Clear?
I would
Well, but wait, let's see if we have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
I would like to go ahead and take a vote on this. If it passes, submit these to the committee, have the committee go back again with the corrections. But I don't think the committee needs to go back with the whole miniature pigs. I don't think it needs to go back with what's already been done. That's true. Let's just pass what we've done, be done, and then say, here, take this back to your committee, have a meeting.
So you're speaking against deferring it for 2 weeks, which would be taking action tonight, okay? Councilman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we send this back to the committee, we can't bring it back for another 6 months. If we defer it for, we can't make any, if it passes, we cannot.
Yeah. Well, we're deferring, okay, she's saying.
If we pass it, we can't bring it back for another 6 months.
That's true.
If we
With changes.
go with Richards and defer it for 2 weeks, then we can make whatever adjustments we want and proceed on.
Councilman Clare?
But none of these are going to, being this small and insignificant as they are, I don't think it's going to matter if they're brought back within 6 months or not.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to get it over with. We've been dealing with this, Mr. Jensen. We were given a task to clean out the drawer, and he cleaned out the whole damn kitchen.
Okay.
Nobody ever accused me of not being thorough.
Right. We may outlive some of the miniature pigs if we keep going much longer. All right, we have a motion, a second, to defer action on this for 2 weeks. Any other discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no. Mayor does not vote.
Okay, we have Mr. Herman and the mayor.
I do not
The mayor's
vote.
not voting.
Yeah.
All All right, we have 7 yes, Clear and Cohen voting no.
7 have been voted yes. The ordinance on animals is deferred for 2 weeks. I'm sorry, yes, you want to make a comment?
If anybody has anything else you want to go to this committee, get it to us ASAP.
And actually, I don't think we're necessarily referring it to the committee. I think it's for us to review ourselves, and we make the changes, they will come. But yes, I agree, bring everything to us. You want to comment?
Just quickly, and this has been reviewed by Team Lisa?
Yes, I got the inquiries, well, they were sent last night, but I got them this morning from Councilmember Hiller, and I just tried, very quickly to respond to each of them. So
Okay.
I think perhaps in 2 weeks, if we just limit the discussion at that time to just these new amendments, we can dispose of the issue fairly quickly.
Okay,
Excellent.
very good, thank you.
Thank you again.
That completes the item. Go to item F, the clerk would read.
F is a report of the Downtown Comprehensive Parking Plan recommendations.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Public Works Director Jason Peak covered the recommendations in the report last week. He has a few additional comments that were received this week and will answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Peak.
Good evening, governing body. We had a couple of questions from the recommendation plan that were sent out as far as the regards to implementation. We provided responses back and shared that with all the council. We stand ready to answer any additional questions you may have, but we're asking for action on the plan.
Okay, is there questions, discussion? Councilman Hiller.
I do have that, and there's been a lot of discussion about this over the last couple weeks. It's taken a lot of time, but quality time. The issue is that what we have before us is not a plan. It is an analysis and some recommendations. And so I could go into it in detail, but there's what's working out is a proposal for accepting those, coming up with some specifics for 2018 that are agreeable to this body, and then setting a calendar for actually getting a plan done. There are some big issues that are fundamentals that have to get worked out for all the pieces to fall together. So I would move to defer this for 1 week. Staff feels that 1 week is adequate to come back with a better motion for you. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to defer action on this ordinance. It is not an ordinance, it's just approval of the plan for 1 week. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the approval plan, the plan is deferred for action for 1 week. We go to item G, an ordinance.
G is an ordinance introduced by Councilmember Elaine Schwartz, amending Section 9.05080 of the Code of the City of Topeka, adding a local amendment to the Uniform Public Offense Code concerning the sale or furnishing of cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, tobacco products, and liquid nicotine to any person under the age of 21.
Thank you. We refer to Councilwoman Schwartz to give us the background and introduction.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to defer my comments till after we hear people speak, because I think we may have a few young people that need to get home and get to bed so they can get to school in the morning. So I would like to, and I know the discussion that we will have will be instrumental, but I do want to have that a possibility, because we do have many people signed up.
All right, that's if the council's in agreement. We will proceed then with public comment. And as we have said, we have a total of, well, there's a large number assigned to speak, so we'll give one, and then we ask, we'll say 2 names. The first person is Dr. Kim Richter. The second is Dr. Eric Voth. So if Dr. Kim Richter would come up, and then we ask Dr. Voth to move to the outside or get nearby so that we can move along quite rapidly. And as you know, you have 4 minutes to speak. The lights will tell you that. The green light when you start, the white light comes on when you have 1 minute to conclude, and the red light when you have to finish.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Sorry. Good evening. My name is Kim Richter, and I live in Lecompton next door, and I direct You Can Quit, which is the hospital-based tobacco treatment program at the University of Kansas Medical Center. And You Can Quit has treated about 16,000 smokers since it started. I could talk to you all night about the health benefits of raising the legal age of tobacco sales to 21 because I'm a researcher, but I'm also a mother, so I'd like to talk to you about one smoker, and that is my 30-year-old son, Nicholas. He went to high school in Perry-Lecompton High School, and he started smoking when he was 17, and I can assure you he didn't get his cigarettes from home, but he did get them from an older friend in high school who was of a legal age to purchase the tobacco products. And, I asked him, so he started at 17. He smoked pretty steadily for about 5 years. And then for about 5 years, he was trying to quit. And during all of that time, I know what the evidence behind quitting smoking, and I would stick a patch on him at 6 in the morning when I left the house. I would do all kinds of things to try to help him to quit. And, he really wanted to quit pretty quickly because he has asthma, and it was making it difficult for him to breathe. But he smoked pretty steadily for 5 years, and then it took him about 5 years of multiple quit attempts with using multiple different sort of strategies to finally be able to stop. And even now, he keeps lozenges with him, the nicotine lozenges, and also he uses e-cigarette, which I have mixed feelings about, but he does use it to keep from smoking because it's so pervasive in his social circle. And I asked him if raising the legal age to smoke to 21 would make a difference, and he thought that it would. He didn't know whether it would stop him completely, but he thought that it would have delayed him being able to start smoking because he wouldn't have been able to get it from his friends. And also, we know there's a lot of evidence that has demonstrated that the younger that you start smoking, the more likely you are to become addicted. And that's because of the way the brain develops. You've got this sort of reward part of your brain that responds to rewards like what you get from smoking a cigarette. And people call that the lizard part of the brain. And that develops pretty young. And then you've got your cognitive control part, which is like your forebrain. And that develops a little bit later. So you can guess which one is kind of in the driver's seat at age 17, right? And so that is why kids are really vulnerable to the effects of nicotine, and that's why most people who start smoking before the legal age of consent, basically. So I think that passing the ordinance would make a huge difference would have made a huge difference to my family, would make a big difference to families here in Topeka. So I would urge you to vote for this and make Topeka a safer place for kids.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Yep.
Dr. Eric Voth, to be followed by Ben Scott.
Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of the council tonight. I'm Dr. Eric Voth. I've practiced here in town for 34 years, grew up here. Richard Harmon and I have known each other for far too long. And I represent not only myself personally, but I supervise as Vice President of Primary Care with Stormont Vale Hospital, 150 primary care physicians in and around the Topeka area, all of whom are very concerned about the health impact of smoking. And we need to understand that even though we hear, tremendous statistics about death, there's so much morbidity from smoking, heart disease, various cancers that people are dealing with. So this is not only an individual issue, but it is an employment issue in terms of the impact that we see on employees over time. I want to specifically pay some attention to this issue of adolescent smoking because, as Dr. Richter has pointed out, very clearly the human brain matures in a sequential pattern so that it is not fully mature until about age 24. So those things that young people are exposed to earlier and earlier and earlier have greater impact, and the risk of addiction of any addictive substance is vastly enhanced the earlier that they start smoking. Thus, someone who smokes at 18 far more likely to be truly addicted and have those long-term health impacts than someone who starts smoking at 21. And in fact, the likelihood of starting smoking at 21, 22, 25 drops off dramatically. There is some evidence in literature that's been done that has looked at areas in Massachusetts, for instance, that have started this but rolled it out over several years, and interestingly found that high school smoking diminished every year that there was a step up in the age. And it's thought that bypass, or the pass-through to high school kids is because of the low 18-year limit, still where individuals are having that contact with high school students and thereby becoming a source. And as that then gets older and older, the source for high school kids begins to dry up. Big picture is we don't want kids to be exposed to tobacco products or addictive substances of any kind. And hopefully, if they are, this type of a ordinance would scoot that out to a later age so that they would have a much lower likelihood of addiction. I think that you'll find that this is a fairly benign, minimal impact kind of financial impact on businesses, and I would strongly urge its adoption, and I'd be open for questions with the little bit time we have.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Ben Scott, to be followed by Bob Alderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you in support of this ordinance concerning the sale of tobacco products to any person under the age 21. I strongly believe that deaths related to tobacco products are preventable. And when I think of the number of adults under the age of 21 who have no health insurance, their death rates will be higher due to a lack of medical care. I want to say, Mr. Mayor, this is a subject that's very dear to me because I worked on this issue when I was on the school board, in which we were able to eliminate smoking on campuses and on school grounds. And it is obvious that many young people's life was prolonged simply because of this. Now, this bill would not be a panacea to the smokers, but I think to delay it and make it so that young people can hopefully make better choices, I think it would be incumbent on this council to do so. I want to share just briefly with you why this issue is so important to me. I had a large family. I'm from the South. And my older brother had to leave school and help to rear the family. And I can remember growing up that during this era, there were some particular cigarettes that was popular during those days. Viceroy was one. I think Cool was the other one. And neither one of these had a filter tip on it during this time. So when the filter tip came around, for some reason, I've never smoked, so I can't tell you what they taste like, but it smelled good. And my brother and several others got hooked on them at a very young age. And by the time I reached my adult age, my older brother had no health insurance, never gone to a doctor, and began to show some symptoms of something that's going on that we couldn't relate to. And in the early 70s, he got sick to the point where he couldn't work. I was in Kansas, he was in Monroe, Louisiana. They called and I went down, and at that time, we found out that he had cancer at the throat. This was very heartening because I had to sit there in the room with him and try to feed him water with a spoon. Just the sight of seeing it was much more harder than I could bear. So I don't want to belabor you with the story any further, but it is extremely important for this council and anyone else that has the ability to make sure that kids under the age 21 doesn't have the opportunity to go out and buy these cigarettes, I hope you would do it. Because these are deaths that are preventable, and I do believe that if you do this, you'll appreciate it down the road. Again, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Bob Alderson, to be followed by Tom Pallas.
Mayor Wolgast, members of the City Council, I am Bob Alderson. I'm a lawyer in Topeka, and I'm appearing on behalf of one of my clients, Casey's General Stores. And we appear in opposition to the ordinance. By way of just brief background about Casey's, they have 1,954 stores in 14 states. 154 of those are in Kansas, 5 of them in Shawnee County, 3 in Topeka, 1 in Rossville, and 1 in Silver Lake. Initially, I want to applaud the sponsors and supporters of this ordinance for their concern about public health. And having said that, however, I must respectfully oppose the ordinance. Mr. Pallas will follow me, and I know his remarks, and while I endorse his remarks, I'm going to focus strictly on the legal aspects of the ordinance. There is in place a state statute that is uniformly applicable to all cities, and it sets the age at 18, which this ordinance would raise to 21. And that, as I say, is uniformly applicable. I note that the League of Kansas Municipalities has submitted a memo to the council, and that memo concludes that the ordinance would be a valid exercise of the city's police power because it is more restrictive than the state law. In my judgment, however, the proposed ordinance cannot be justified by a contention that it is more restrictive and therefore not in conflict with the state statute. While I agree with the League that the existence of a state statute, uniform or not, does not deprive a city of the power to enact an ordinance on the same subject as long as the ordinance is more restrictive than the state law. But there is a caveat by the courts which the League has ignored. The city ordinance cannot be in conflict with the uniform state law. In the remarks, and I've given my prepared remarks to the clerk, and I think they were distributed, and I cite a case of Blevins versus Hebert. In that case, the court noted that normally a city has the power to legislate by ordinary ordinance in the exercise of its police power unless a state statute specifically preempts the field or the ordinance conflicts with state law. In this case, of course, there is no preemption, so the court gives guidance how you determine whether there's a conflict. Such determination requires an analysis of whether the proposed ordinance prohibits what the state law permits or permits what the state law authorizes. In this instance, the proposed ordinance prohibits what the state law permits. That is, the proposed ordinance would make it unlawful to sell cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, tobacco products, or liquid nicotine to anyone under 20 years of age, whereas it is lawful under the uniformly applicable state law to make such sales to any person over 18 years of age. Therefore, the proposed ordinance is in conflict with the uniformly applicable state law, and I urge that you do not adopt it on that basis. Thank you for listening to my views. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Tom Pallas, to be followed by Lauren Smith.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, good evening, and thank you for letting me appear tonight to make a few comments with regard to this new ordinance, or the ordinance that you're considering. I am Tom Pallas. I come as a citizen or a resident of Topeka, as well as the executive director of the Petroleum Marketers Convenience Store Association, so I represent the C-stores in the state. I believe, and our board members believe, that this ordinance goes too far. as Bob indicated, or Mr. Olson indicated, that an adult is by state law, is 18 years of age. So what can an 18-year-old do today? An 18-year-old, as I say, is an adult. They can serve in the military, they can buy a gun, they can get married, they can sign a contract to purchase a house or a car, they can be sued, or they can sue someone, they can be tried as an adult in court, they can sign a will, and they can inherit property. So they can make decisions on their own. What I look at this ordinance is that government is reaching too far. Government's trying to protect me from me. I understand the issues that we heard from several proponents of the ordinance. I don't disagree, tobacco is bad. But what I think this is too far of a reach for what we're doing here, when we have a state law that tells you what an adult is. This also is an issue of compliance. And I deal with regulatory issues and compliance issues for C-stores and fuel distributors. And this issue, this ordinance, nowhere in this ordinance is there a penalty for the individual, only for the retailers. There's nothing in here that punishes the person that tries to buy tobacco, steal tobacco, whatever the case may be. State law has those provisions. If you try to attempt to buy tobacco, there's a fine. If you possess tobacco, there's a fine. So in other words, I'm 20 years old, I'm walking down the street, there's a policeman on the street, I'm smoking a cigarette, the cop can't do anything. But he can do it to the retailer. Now, if I'm 18 or if I'm 17, I'm walking down the street, the cop can find me, can ticket me at that point in time. So there's no personal accountability in your ordinance. Also, we have a county ordinance that is different than state law. This ordinance here, if it dovetails with the county resolution, that's better, but you're going to have confusion in the marketplace, in my opinion. Now, if compliance is the issue, Kansas is doing one heck of a job with compliance today. Kansas has over 90% compliance, keeping tobacco products out of the hands of minors. Minors are what? 18 years of age or younger, not 18 to 21. We've already established that. So we are at 90% compliance rate. That's over the top. 80% is what is the federal standard of being in good compliance, where you don't get penalized. We also, in our industry, we have laws that say we have to ID people that are 27 years of age or younger. So we have to do, if you come in a store and you look like you're 27 or younger, we have to ID you. I mean, that's federal law. FDA requires that. We feel that this ordinance creates significant inconsistency in the laws. And if we want to make it consistent, there's one place to go, 10th and Topeka, the state legislature. That's where you need to go to make it consistent throughout the state. And if we don't want tobacco in the state, why don't we have an ordinance that bans it totally? Or take it to the legislature. Let's have a law that says let's ban it totally. That way, everybody gets to speak to it. Not just a piecemeal type of ordinances that we're doing throughout the state.
Yeah, that is complete
I appreciate
response.
your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have Lauren Smith to be followed by Mia Weiler.
Hi, my name is Lauren Smith. I go to Washburn Rural High School. I'm 16, and I'm here to provide some youth perspective on the subject, because something kind of crazy happened to me this weekend that's I've never encountered before. I was in Osage City with some friends, and we went to a party, and a girl I didn't really know, but everybody else did, came up to me and introduced herself, and we started talking, and she seemed really cool, and I wanted to be friends with her. And then she paused for a moment, and she kind of looked me up and down, and she was like, "You look 18. Can you give me your number so that I can hit you up for some cigarettes?" And I was completely confused. I didn't really know what to do because I've never encountered a situation like that, so I didn't know what to say other than no, and then I walked away. There are several problems with this situation, but my biggest concern is that I'm 16, and I'm not old enough to buy any form of tobacco, but if she would have gone up to just about anybody else in that room, they could have bought her cigarettes like then and there, and she would have gotten what she wanted. And that's exactly what she did. She went and found some senior that was 18 or 19, and they took her to the gas station. She could have, the fact that the current legal age to buy tobacco is 18, corresponds with a lot of my peers at my school and in the community, is awful to think about, because this opens a really easy gate to accessing tobacco products for high schoolers or even middle schoolers if they have a sibling that's 18 or somebody they know, a friend of a friend or something. Raising the age to 21 will absolutely distance the possibility and even the consideration of teenagers buying tobacco products. And it will absolutely create a safer and healthier environment for Topeka. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mia. Lauren, thank you for your comments. Mia Weiler, to be followed by Commissioner Archer.
Hi. My name is Mia Weiler. I'm 15 years old and I'm a sophomore at Seaman High School. This situation is very dear to my heart because in January 2017, I lost my best friend to lung cancer because of this situation. And I hadn't known about this for years on end, and she had been doing this. And during November of 2016, she had been taken to Stormont Hospital, and she had been tested, and she came back with stage 2 lung cancer. And she had been fighting for her life, and knowing that she had been doing this without my, not really my consent, but without me knowing, has been breaking my heart. And knowing that in January when she passed away, she didn't have to make this decision, and she was very influenced when she did this. So changing this to 21 would really make this such a better situation to me, and I feel like it would definitely, I guess it would make a better society. I don't know how debatable that is, but I guess that's what, I see this every single day at my school, and just last week, I would see people coming into school throwing their cigarettes out in the parking lot and walking in with no care in the world. And it really breaks my heart to know that they don't give a care in the world and that they could potentially be ruining their future, ruining their college reputation, and anything past that they could be portraying. So seeing this being an option and changing it to 21 would be really dear to my heart, and knowing that this could change something in my school and local schools and maybe something across the state would be amazing to me. Okay. So I really hope that you guys take this into consideration, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Mia. Commissioner Archer, to be followed by Mary Jane Hellebust. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, City Manager. Glad you're still here. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, for the record, I don't have to get up and go to school early tomorrow morning. I know I would again respectfully ask for you to approve this ordinance. I know that the lobbyists will tell you there's a legal issue. There's not. I've talked to our county counselor at length, and he indicates we're on very good legal standing, and we'll be more than happy to take this to court and discuss it. I keep hearing comparisons about, if you can vote, if you can serve in the military. I don't understand those comparisons. It's a civic duty to vote. It's an honor to serve in the military. There's nothing honorable about smoking. There's nothing honorable about something that takes taxpayer dollars from you and me to support the health care of people that make bad choices. And finally, I'd like to compliment Councilman Jensen. I was at a meeting last week, and he said, every conversation we have, every meeting we go to, every issue we discuss as leaders in our community, we need to talk about health. And he couldn't be more right. Health of our community is so important. It's not only about economic development, about quality of life, it's about our kids. It's about our grandchildren. Please vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mary Jane Hellebust, to be followed by Jim Barnett.
Good evening. My name is Mary Jane Hellebust, and I'm a citizen of Topeka. First of all, I think we need to remember what tobacco is. It's not a good thing. You know, it is unhealthy. If it had been instituted today, manufactured, distributed, it would not have been allowed by FDA. But we do know that it is still it is legal, but it is still being promoted by tobacco companies. And that is a problem because we also know that the primary customers, first customers of tobacco companies are kids. Remember what kids are. They're replacement smokers. As the older folks get sick, give up, and die, all right, it is these younger kids who are coming up, and many of them are starting to smoke before they're even 21, 90% while they're still teenagers. So instituting this ordinance is important for the health, their health, but the health of the community. And we have to still remember the tobacco companies and what they are. One of the recent RICO, you know, one of these racketeering cases, the judge said, the evidence in this case clearly establishes that defendants have not ceased engaging in unlawful activity. Their continuing misconduct misleads consumers in order to maximize defendants' revenues by recruiting new smokers, the majority of whom are under the age of 18, preventing current smokers from quitting, and thereby sustaining the industry. Now, I doubt very many of you saw the USA Today recently, I think a couple of weeks back. Lovely article. Look at that. Tobacco companies are proclaiming about the health effects of smoking. You know, it kills people, it's addictive, causes heart disease. Now, you understand, this is ordered by the court in the USA Today. How many kids, do you know, read the USA Today, let alone look at the ads? There'll be some television commercials also, you know, announcing these situations. But again, kids are not going to be paying attention to them because we've got tobacco companies who are doing their best to extend their marketing and financial interests. And so we have new products coming out, you know, whether your e-cigarettes are coming out, smokeless tobacco with different flavors. The e-cigarettes that are coming out right now have lovely flavors. How many adults do you think would go for marshmallow flavored liquid nicotine? Gummy bears? You know, in addition to the traditional cherry, lemon, you know, this type of thing. So these are continued activities by tobacco companies, many of whom own the new e-cigarettes that are coming out. They are continuing to put their feelers out and their money out to broaden their marketing base and to continue looking for those replacement smokers who are our kids who are going to die prematurely when they don't have to. So this ordinance is very important. You know, if we can keep kids from under 21 from getting access to tobacco, we're doing a good thing for our society and for Topeka.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Jim Barnett, to be followed by Dr. Pizzano. And I believe it's Dr. Jim Barnett.
Just Jim works fine. Thank you, Mayor, Mayor-elect, council members. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll be very brief. I really appreciate Councilwoman Schwartz introducing this. I'm here on behalf of the Shawnee Medical Society. I have the privilege of serving as president and also serve on the board of trustees of the Kansas Medical Society. And I've practiced internal medicine for 35 years and seen the ravage and devastation and death of tobacco products. So you've had great comments tonight. I would only like to add just a couple more. One is if you look at the 4,400 deaths that occur across the state every year and would extrapolate those numbers to Topeka, how many people in Topeka die every year, it would be approximately 176. That would be a conservative number. Contrast that to what happens in a bad year with homicides, which is 25 to 30, and I think 29 is the last number I saw. So you have the potential to impact something really, really significant here with your vote. I was thinking about what it would feel like to be in your chairs. I had the privilege of serving on a school board in Emporia when we were prohibiting tobacco products on school campus in 1995, to give you a bit of my age. And it was a tough vote with obviously opposition, and reasons not to do it, but it was the right thing to do, and it still feels good 22 years today. I also, in 2010, had the privilege of working in the Kansas Senate to do what was really major for this state, to have Clean Air Kansas, and that has had such a positive impact on health and saved lives and secondhand smoke exposure. So what you're about to vote on tonight is something that you can feel good for many, many years, 22 or hopefully many more than just that. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I hope you support it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Dr. Pacino, followed by Linda Oakes. And I worked on your name. It's Pacino.
You practiced in the last 2 weeks. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. Gianfranco Pezzino, Shawnee County Health Officer. I don't know what else can I tell you at this point to convince you to vote for this ordinance. You heard the arguments. You heard our young people. I really admire their courage to come in front of this body and speak about their experiences. You heard from the medical professionals. You heard from the public health professionals. You heard from the advocates. This is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do for our youth. This is the right thing to do for our city. We want to be a city that projects an image of a wellness promoting for every citizen in the community. We have a problem in Shawnee County with tobacco use. We have a big problem. On average, 19% of adults smoke in Shawnee County. But that number in Topeka, in certain areas of Topeka, is estimated to be as high as 37% or more. And can you guess where those areas are? Those are the areas in East Topeka. Those are the areas where the less privileged people live in our community. Those are the people that suffer more from tobacco addiction. This is not going to fix the problem. It's not a panacea for everything, but it will make tobacco less accessible to people who shouldn't have access to that, including our high school students below the age of 18. You heard the testimonies here. That's how they get most of their cigarettes. Iola has done it, Garden City has done it, Kansas City Metro Area has done it, Topeka can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Linda Oakes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Linda Oakes, and I am the director of the Shawnee County Health Department. I hope tonight you will approve this ordinance and help prevent young people from ever starting to use tobacco products. The Centers for Disease Control considers ordinances like Tobacco 21 a best practice for preventing tobacco use among youth. I want to tell you this ordinance has generated a lot of good discussion and collaborative work among many partners. It's exciting to see Topeka looking at health issues and working to address it in the best way possible. Tobacco 21 is a great first step in what I hope will be a continuing conversation between everyone on how we can make Topeka a healthier place to live, work, learn, and play. I also hope this is just the beginning of the health department working with the city of Topeka. We have a lot of issues to work on, and I'm excited about working on these issues with you together. The health department will be looking for more ways in the future to communicate with the city of Topeka. I do want to take a moment to thank two public servants who have worked tirelessly on this ordinance. Shawnee County Commissioner Bob Archer introduced the ordinance for Shawnee County and continues to endorse Tobacco 21 as a way to start improving the health of our county. Councilmember Elaine Schwartz enthusiastically sponsored the ordinance for the city and even postponed a medical procedure to be here for the discussions and vote. Commissioner Archer and Councilmember Schwartz, you are public health champions. Thank you also to Mayor Wolgast and the City of Topeka staff for your assistance. I'm looking forward to working with the city in the future. I urge all of you to become public health champions and pass this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for your comments. That completes the public comment for this evening. I will refer back to Councilwoman Schwartz for comments and if she would like to make a motion.
Yes, well, let me read this first because there was a 9-year-old that sent us all a letter, and I had correspondence with the mother today, and she didn't know if she would be here because of a late hour. And if Councilman Harmon was going to read this, I said, well, if he does, I'll postpone and let him, because this little girl is in his district. So I want to read this because it goes clear down to age 9 as far as wanting us to pass this. Dear City Council, I think raising the age of being allowed to buy cigarettes is a good idea because less people will be allowed to buy cigarettes. I also think that raising the age of being allowed to buy cigarettes is a good idea because less people die at a younger age, because if they were following the law, they would have to be at least 21 years old to die instead of just 18. Another reason I think you should raise the age of being allowed to buy cigarettes is people that are 21 have better control over what they say or do, but people who are age 18 have less control over what they say or do. Also, 21-year-old people have 3 more years to think about making better health choices, but 18-year-olds have had 3 less years to think about making better health choices. The last reason I think that you should raise the age of being allowed to buy cigarettes to 21 years old, have less friends that are younger than 21 than the 18-year-olds. When this happens, they are less likely to buy cigarettes for younger children who are not allowed to buy cigarettes. I hope you have decided to change the law so you can only buy cigarettes when you are 21 or older. This is from Kibran Staley, and she's 9 years old and in 4th grade. Yes, it would be even greater if you would change the law so no age could smoke, because a lot of people die each year from cigarettes. So I think our kids are overwhelmingly in support of this. And Topeka, you know, I heard today that there's a concern about Payless leaving because the millennials that graduate from colleges aren't coming here. And it's the same reason the miniature pigs. We need to move forward to draw people to Topeka. And being a smoke-free environment is one of those areas that we can do that. The argument on businesses I'm a business supporter. I've been a chamber supporter all my life. I've had businesses. We have proven with this smoke-free ban in public places that it did not affect businesses. This is not going to affect Casey's. There is a small percentage of people that go in and buy cigarettes that this would affect. So I don't think that's a good argument. And then the last thing that I wanted to say was that if the AG was going to make an opinion on this and we wanted to wait until an opinion came out, he would have made it a long time ago. It is just like the smoking ban. Cities pass it, and then the state passes it, and that's what we need to do. So with that, I'll move my motion.
Okay, it's been moved to approve the ordinance. Councilman Jensen seconds. Further discussion. We've had Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to briefly thank all the folks that took the time to meet with me and to talk about how this is only the first step in what is a much larger plan for all these partners that have been energized by this movement toward working toward better health in our community. And it's a very serious issue. And again, I'll reiterate to this body, in everything we do, we need to consider the public health aspect of it. And we haven't done that in the past. And our community, our county, is in pretty bad shape. So I'm excited to work with the county health department on future initiatives. I think this is a great first step. I just want to encourage all the folks out there who have gotten to this point, please don't stop. We have a lot of other issues that need to be addressed, and this is only the first step in truly impacting young adults and smoking. I applaud you all for the work, and thank you for putting forth the effort.
Councilman De La Isla.
Thank you, Mayor Wilgas. I just want to ask legal again, just for reiteration. We are in the legal standing for us to do this.
Correct, Councilmember Daley. So we've looked at it, and we think we have a solid case to move forward.
Well, thank you. My remarks are going to be short, but I think that as we take a look at today in the state of Chicago, in Chicago and Illinois, a whole bunch of mayors got together to talk about climate change. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because nationally and statewide, we are not able to get the things that we need passed. We are in a state right now that doesn't have enough Medicaid coverage, and we're having a conversation about something that is increasing health costs, and we're not considering the impact that we're having on health, because we're going to think about the tax that is going to be lost because we're not going to be selling as many cigarettes, when we're losing millions of dollars to health because people are smoking too young. I don't want to pass the ordinance in the sense that I don't want to restrict people from making choices, but I tell you what, it is knowledge that at 21 is when your brain is able to start making, 23 actually is when you're able to start making really solid choices. So at this point in time, I would encourage all the other cities that are looking at us right now and join us as we go ahead and we try to make every policy decision a health-related policy. and we try to make sure that we just support our constituents. This is one of the things that I have heard the most support. So even if we don't agree with it, the overwhelming support that we've had from the public is enough for us to go ahead and support this.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as I expressed to Councilmember Schwartz, I wish she wasn't sponsoring this because I really respect her. But let me say, I've never smoked in my life. I've never used tobacco products except a couple times, maybe as a little kid. You're doing the chewing tobacco thing as some cool thing, which isn't very cool. But none of my wife and 4 children, none of them smoke. None of my 5 brothers and sisters who grew up in East Topeka smoke. My parents don't smoke. So let me preface all this by saying I hate cigarettes and any tobacco products. I am not for them at all, and I wish they weren't around. However, kind of to dovetail with what Commissioner Archer said, I did have the opportunity to serve in the Air Force, and I was sworn in and took the oath of office when I was 18. A couple of years ago, I got the honor of seeing my daughter sworn in as a cadet at the age of 17. And for better or for worse, we consider 18-year-olds to be adults in this country with all the rights and responsibilities thereof. And later on, when I started a business at 20, when I went to and applied for a loan, when I signed those papers with Highland Park Bank at the time, they thought I was an adult, and it didn't matter to them that, well, he's only 20 at the time, his brain's not fully developed, we're going to let him out of this obligation he's making. It was, no, they wanted paid back, and they did get paid back. So as much as I hate cigarettes, and I would love all this not to be an issue, I even hate more government intrusion in our personal lives. And I see this as government saying, you're not old enough as an adult. In every other way, we'll consider you an adult, but in this one way, you're not responsible enough or don't know enough to take care of yourself, so it's government that's going to do it. And again, I really respect all you guys, and I just wish if there's another way to do this, I would be all for it. If there's another way to eliminate tobacco altogether for all ages, I would be for that, but I cannot support this, unfortunately.
Deputy Mayor Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I thought somebody else was ahead of me. I'm going to actually ditto Tony's remarks. I'm going to come down on the side of personal liberty, and we really shouldn't be making the decision for these adults on what they can and can't buy, especially legal products. Thank you.
Okay, other discussion. Councilwoman Claire.
I understand the arguments about being 18, being able to sign for a car, being able to get a loan, being able to get married. That doesn't mean those are smart decisions that they're making. It means somewhere somebody said, at 18 you're an adult. We're going to let you make these decisions. I wasn't part of that, but I can be a part of this. And I can be a part of saying, I don't think you make good choices at 18, and this is one of them that I can make a decision and help you with your decision. I'd go back and change some of those if I could, but I can't.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, other discussion? Councilman Hiller.
A question for Councilwoman Schwartz, if I could. There's been discussion about the disconnect between just not letting people buy tobacco products and actually banning them from using them as well. Can you talk about whether there's a movement afoot? Is this, do you expect if this passes that it's going to stand alone for some time, or where are we with all that?
Thank you. Both the mayor and I were approached by public health advocates to support this. And of course, my public health background of 8 years at the Kansas Public Health Association, I was very interested in it. And then, of course, I had my heart condition that was related to smoking for 33 years, that I thought this is what we need to do. The disconnect comes in the fact that we need the state to pass this. But it's just like the public smoking ban that we had, the Clean Air Act. Many cities passed it, and then the state passed it. So if we can get it passed in our city so that we join the other 19, I think there's 19 cities in Kansas that have this tobacco 21, that you have to be 21 to buy tobacco products, then that will be a momentum. And as you said the last week, that we need to have this as a legislative agenda. This should be on our legislative agenda, that we request from the league to put this out there, that we need to have the legislature pass this also. But that, to me, is the disconnect, is that the cities, as Mayor-elect said, are having to take the lead in some of these discussions. So I hope I've answered your question.
Okay. All right, other comments, the discussion? We have before us a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes, Emerson and Cohen voted no.
8 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. That completes our action items. I'm sorry. I'll recognize Councilwoman Schwartz.
I just want to thank all of those that came to support this, including my physician, Dr. Barnett. He's my personal doctor. I had no idea that he was going to be here tonight. It is that important that we have gotten so many people here. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We will take a 10-minute recess. 8:15. 8:15.
She's one of your students. Yeah. Oh, geez.